as you're thinking about what you put in your proposal, as you're thinking about project one, what are some things, what are questions you still have? What are things that are working for you that you think?
This is really broad, but can you like go over the
Yeah. I'll do. One question I had was like, what things like can't we do? Like for example, like one of the things I'm going to talk about is the game, and one of the things I'd like to address the game, like the gameplay. But I'd really like to show that as well, like through like images. So, but the images are just like, you know, they're not moving, so you can't really get the movement of the game. So it would be possible if I could like make like a GIF, and I know GIF, but and throw it in the essay, like.
Now, since you had me last semester, what do you think I'm going to say?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's cool.
And
freedom?
Because modern writing requires modern solutions.
nice. 21st century writers need to be able to do that kind of thing. Absolutely. Not because of freedom. I don't care that you have. Not kidding. I care that you think you have freedom. It's also what makes me a good dungeon master when doing D&D is I make you think. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It is true. I try and give you guys a lot of ways in because I want you to be able to practice finding your way into it. So absolutely, and that was the suggestion I was going to make. So you're already where I was going to go. Make a GIF of it, embed it. Check the technology because maybe you'll discover that maybe a Word document or a Google Doc doesn't do the GIF right. And I don't know whether it's GIF or GIF. Don't judge me. I grew up with peanut butter. But yeah, if it makes it easier to like try and build it in blog form through Google Sites or something like that, where the GIF will work better, that's totally fine. Yeah. So keep absolutely.
So, this question doesn't make sense. So can we talk about the games, like, however we want, like, in our own way, I guess? I don't know if I asked that right, but.
So it needs to connect, actually, when you say in your own way, what do you mean? What do you think?
I'm thinking, like, in as much detail as we want, like.
So I think the important thing to keep in mind is, are you matching the genre, right? So it should be an argument-based essay about your game. So you're making some sort of claim about the communication in the game, right? And how that happens. That's cool. And we'll go in more detail, which is probably why Kate asked the question, right? So it is meant to be a persuasive piece of writing, not just compare and contrast, right? So because you can do an analysis without doing evaluation. We haven't walked through the differences between analysis or description analysis and evaluation in this class yet, right? I think that's on the list for today. So that'll help. So an evaluation has an argument to it. You do want to be careful not to give too much descriptive writing. Dealing with something. We'll trust it. So you don't want to give us more description than we need. You want to kind of assume that the reader, if they don't understand some part of the game, you want to give us just enough.
Two gotcha.
Yeah. What was it?
Two. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard actually. What the hell, guys? I'm about to get off.
So hopefully everybody's safe. Okay. So there's a lot of ways into this project. There's a lot of games, a lot of genres. There's a lot of different pieces of communication you can choose to look at. But the bottom line is you're going to be making an argument about a game or two, and how they work and why that matters and who that affects. Well, that's good. That kind of stuff. And you can use any of the lenses we cover in class and beyond connect to communication and writing and everything as a way into it. So there's a lot of opportunity. Because it is an evaluative and argumentative style essay with research-based evaluation, you want to make sure you're using deeper, more reliable sources, scholarly sources, and you want to make sure that you're not spending so much time giving us like the background of the game. Call of Duty's been around for 20. You don't want it to feel like Wikipedia for a page, right? That's not what we need. We don't need 400 words on the basics of the game. you know, Call of Duty's a first-person shooter that a lot of people enjoy playing, right? And people talk about Fortune. You know, so we don't need that much on the background side. We need the framing for your specific argument. Okay.
I was just gonna ask you, when it comes to like using some like visual evidence like that, what I was thinking about doing for maybe some of the points being argued is like using gameplay footage of my own for some of the games I'm covering, and it's not just the gameplay footage itself. There's certain parts of it that's being annotated to show how it's communicating certain parts to a player. Do you think that would work? Some parts or not really?
That sounds like something that should work. Put in your first draft and then remind me to look at it in your comments or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Kids.
Okay, so my question's kind of like about the audience of it, because if I have to explain like the concept of an open world game to like my grandma,
Yeah.
it's gonna be different from like you.
Who here knows what an open world?
An open world game.
Raise your hand if you know what that means. Okay. Cool. Just for context, this is your target audience.
Okay.
So you guys are writing to each other. 3 or 4 of you will read it and give feedback, including numerical grade-based feedback. I will use that to guide my grading process. I usually try and honor that if as long as I don't think someone is kind of putting in all 10s or all 0s or something like that. If I think you're making critical choices about what you're doing. We'll talk more about that when we get there, but this is your target audience. You will be evaluating based on the 8 aspects of writing other people's essays, right? And there are research-based reasons I have to do that, and we'll talk more about it later, just to not belabor it. So this is your target audience. So it's still, like, who doesn't know what open world gaming means? So it might be good to do what's called a gloss, which is just a real quick half-sentence definition embedded, right? Parenthetical. All right, other questions about the project? And I'm not sure what's going on there. So,
Or swap, the games that I proposed, or I like to do that.
you're allowed to do that. I don't recommend doing it once you get the first draft. But if you did the proposal, and here's the thing to remember about the writing process. It's not wasted effort to change, right? To change your topic, to change your focus. Part of the writing process is to discover what works and what doesn't work. And so the best thing you can do is run into it as hard as you can and then realize that that's not the way to go, dead end, move on. That's also my advice when you're trying to figure out a major. If you're not sure, but you think this one might be the one, lean into it, do the best you can with it, see where it takes you, and if you get to a place where you realize it's not the thing for you, at least you get there faster, right? And so for me, that's what if it's any encouragement, just because of where you're at. Like, that's one of the ways that I handle it. I find nothing gets wasted, and the process is, like, part of the process is getting to a place where we know this one's not the answer, right? And the faster we get to this isn't the answer, we realize what is.
So does it have to be 2 games?
It can be just one. I think the project description might have 2 required. The proposal definitely did. Don't stress, it can be just one. And that's just me. I could have clarified, or I could have changed it.
I was looking at this, I was like, thinking about this, like, if we have to do both games, I was thinking, how the hell am I gonna explain the FGC to fighting game community and just how it
Yeah,
works?
so give a little bit of a gloss. Pretend that there's someone who's moderately informed, because we're talking about a lot in this class connected games. So they may have heard a little bit. So give us a little bit of a gloss. You can always give like secondary links, and like if you want more definition wise, you can go here. I know a great YouTuber who talks about this stuff, right? You can like link out the expertise that you don't need, like that you don't need to explain, but you feel like it might be helpful but not necessary. Make sure it's not necessary, because that should be in your essay. But if it's helpful, you can always give them a source to jump to, and it not affect, like it doesn't have to be count as one of your sources to go check this YouTube out if you're not sure what this means. Or here's a little bit, but if you want more, go here. That's always okay. And that is dealing with that's a good strategy to use when you have layers of audience who are informed to uninformed on the specific. Okay, so let's. So the reason it can be good to think through one game versus 2, or the reason I want you to be able to have that option is because sometimes I've found that people really like digging into the communication side of things, and other people really like digging into the games themselves. So someone might look and go, I want to look at 2 games because I just really like talking about the games. Why would I do that? Game 1, game 2, and so to do that, I'm going to look at the same presentation of communication, same communication principle. So that would be like C1, C2, C3. And those could be paragraphs, they could be chunks, it could be 10 paragraphs that fills that up. And then, but it could be communication principle 1, communication principle 2, or writing or whatever. You guys tracking with that? That's one structure. If someone really wants to focus on the games and kind of point to examples of different types of communication across the 2 games and say something meaningful about that, that's one possible structure. The other thing is, you may not need 2 games, but if you could do it this way. You could say communication or writing principle 1, 2, or 3, content thing that I want to deal with, and it could be a game 1, game 2, all the way down, right, in each category, or it could be game 1 and then an expanded version, right, even more, like a second example from the same game. I give you that as all of these would be okay for this project structurally, and these aren't meant to be paragraphs, these are meant to be structured, so it can be as many paragraphs as it takes. But thinking about it that way might change how you form the argument. In these 2 games, we see these principles of communication, A, B, and C, show up in a meaningful way and affect the players in X, Y, and Z way. And then you lay that out. Or these important things about communication show up in this game in a variety of ways, and then get a how in A, B, and C ways, right? And so then that separates your chunks. Both of those are fine. Or all of these possible structures are fine. It's your job to decide based on your interests and what you want to focus on, which is best for the argument you're making. If you care more about the psychology of the game and the communication of the game, well, maybe you want to focus on one game and see how that plays out. If you're like, if you pick 2 games only because you don't think you'll be able to write enough about one, that's okay, but you're gonna get a lot of tools about how to write about games and expand the thinking. We've already talked about a few of them already, as far as like asking some how, why, who it affects questions. Look.
I was just going to ask you, do you think it might be helpful to dive into things such as like layers of communication when it comes to, so like what I mean by that is like, you have explicit, which would be of course like dialogue between characters or you the player, whatever.
You should definitely anchor to specific moments of communication in the game. And remember that could be, if it's an RPG or something, that could be character to character, like your avatar and an NPC type communication and what that looks like in game. It could be player to player, or it could be game designer to player to help them figure out how to play the game, right? So all of those are possible. Everybody track of that? So the scary part is it could be any of these things. The fun part is that you get to decide which ones to focus us on. That's your job. You get to choose what you think is going to be meaningful and valuable to you and your classmates. And so it's not, if you had a lot of classes where they said, write this essay, focus on this, use this structure, it's not, that helps you practice making paragraphs. That helps you practice what's happening inside the paragraphs. That doesn't help you think about how to add value through communication. And that's what writing and communication is about. It's about adding value to yourself and the people around you through communication through writing. That make sense? So figure out what the thing is that we need to understand about that game that helps us understand ourselves or add to our knowledge of the world or whatever it is. And just focus it really tightly on whatever you think is most valuable. When you spend a meaningful amount of time trying to understand what is, understand what it might mean, and understand why it matters, what's the next step if you've taken all that time to do all that work? Share it. So usually after you've done critical research, analysis, and come to an evaluative conclusion, the next step is to share it or advocate for whatever belief that research process brought in you. Right? If you have, and so sometimes the reason we don't have anything to share or we're not sure what we believe is because we didn't do the work it takes to get to a belief worth sharing. Existential crisis. for this particular first draft. Remember that drafts can be messy. We don't care. I don't care on drafts about grammar. I care about the process along the way. I'm not looking for polish. I just want to see you making progress. Drafts are not about polish, but progress. Put that in your notes. Drafts are not about polish. They're about progress.
So I just have a really quick question about the scholarly sources. Last semester, I didn't think I did so well in the scholarly semesters as sources. So I was just kind of just feel like this project, like, what counts as a scholarly source?
So I think I've got it on my plan for next Thursday to do more with scholarly sources in class. So we'll dig into it a little bit more. Yes. Okay. Short version. It's good to start including APA style references. If you're getting them from the library databases, do that. Don't over-focus on sentence level polishing. And your next draft is going to build on this one. So the next draft says like 750 words. You use the 350 here, right? So keep that in mind. It keeps building. The exception is that the proposal is a separate genre than the essay. So there may be a sentence or two you can draw in, but the essay is doing something different than the proposal was. The proposal was brainstorming the value of a thing, and the essay is giving the value of the thing.
Just to ask, would it be fine if you're using things like Google Scholar to find some of your sources, or no?
It's not wrong, but you're going to have, but Google Scholar, you don't always have access to the articles like you do the databases here. It is a proficiency of a college writer to be able to do more than Google Scholar, right? And use access to the databases and understand how they work as part of your research process. So you should use this as an opportunity to practice that skill. Yeah, because Google Scholar, you can find snippets, you might be able to find abstracts, and some of the best research on a topic may be behind a $70 paywall, right? Which the library databases may have accessible. Now, if you want to do like a 5-minute thing, I have encouraged people to go find articles and then use the Ask the Librarian function on the library website for CGC and say, do we have access to this? I was trying to figure out where I could find it. And they might be able to, that could be something the Ask the Librarian function could help with. I've also said don't use Wikipedia, but like don't ever cite Wikipedia. But if there's a list of resources, that you might be able to piggyback off that. Same thing if you find a meaningful article in a database that's a research-based article and it's got 20 sources on the bottom, you might be able to use some of those sources too. So, you know, finding one source often will lead to a whole network or web of sources related to the same topic. Because we're told when we publish to put it in the conversation of scholarship that exists already. Okay. Kate, does that help you with the overall picture? Do you need more?
I'm just like a little bit confused on what exactly we should be researching. Like, if I pick a board game,
Yeah.
am I just talking about like communication between the players and researching that? Or
That's an option. It could, so if we use Monopoly, it could be impact of capitalism on gaming. It could be sociologically oriented instead of historically or political science oriented or economically oriented sources. Those are all okay. If we did Monopoly, it could be on the technological development of board games and the user experience, which would be like technical writing side analysis and how it communicates. So all of those are okay. We can talk about the visual design of the board itself, the color choices from an aesthetic standpoint, and what they might trigger psychologically, if you can find that kind of source. That's the thing is, all of those tell us what kind of communication might happen or what that game does to enhance or detract from the communication, right? If you opened an essay with Monopoly is considered a divorce game or whatever, and then you went and found sociological research on marriage dissatisfaction, about finances, well, maybe you could draw an argument there. and say, because it highlights one of the tracking. All of those are possible. Find the thing based on your major, your personal interests, the thing you think you care about or your classmates care about, and drill down into that one or two things, as long as it's somewhat connected to communication and writing.
When it comes to the like the essay and stuff like that, do you think it wouldn't really be like? Do you think we should establish rules as far as like what communication is being looked at in the essay or writing, or do you feel like that's kind of out of the scope of what we're trying to do?
So you're analyzing communication in the game, so you should establish the scope in the introduction. That's part of the promise to your reader of what this essay is going to be about. So you should say in your thesis probably that these things, like whatever you name in your thesis, is the things that should show up in your body, which could be the type of communication, which should be the type of communication. Yeah. Or whichever part of communication you can focus on. All right, any other big questions? Yeah.
As long as we get to 332 words, do you want us to write full sentences, or can we also do bullet?
You can do bullet points. You can make it an outline, as long as it's helping. As long as there's specific things, like it's not just. Be aware of the difference between an outline and like a structure map. Like there's a better word for it. I'm just spacing on it right now. But there are some people who write, "This is where I'll include my hook." That's not an outline. Like a hook about what, right? I need to find an attention grabber that connects to this principle of communication. Might be better, and then what's the actual hook? Or I need, this background information for the introductory paragraph should include this, this, and this, and kind of get your brainstorming out.
Okay.
That's okay. Don't feel like you have to do an outline either. Either or both is fine, as long as you're starting to make progress, building some momentum toward the essay. Okay. Any other logistics questions about this draft? Again, we're going to have multiple drafts. It's over time. You'll do the first one, and if you hit all the basic pieces, you'll get all the points, and then we'll roll back through after we get more content from the next meme day and the next lecture day and stuff like that. So it's an ongoing process to add, right? You'll get more expertise that then you'll be able to apply to each subsequent draft. Anything that you think you need to know that will hold you up if you don't.
Just double checking. You did say we can choose whether it's on one game or two, right?
Yes. I don't know if my instructions say that, but yes, it doesn't have to be about two. It can be just one. Okay? All right, with that, this went by so fast. Like, we only have 30 minutes left, and we didn't even get to the cool stuff. All right. I want us to pull out the Foss, and Trapp article. I want to talk about the rhetorical traditions, the history of rhetorical traditions. So the way you can do that is you can access it through the meme day where you had that as a reading, right? So actually, let's do this. So in your groups real fast, talk amongst yourselves. What are things you remember from the meme day content, either the textbook or the Foss, and Trapp history of rhetoric reading? Talk amongst yourselves, pull out your notes, refer back to them, try and jog each other's memories.